All right.
And welcome to the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live from my bedroom, I guess. We are trying some social distancing broadcasting for I don't know how long. We don't know when this is going to be over. I was talking to a friend. I said I feel like we're in the middle of a Netflix movie, and it's just we push pause because now we don't know where it's coming up. But I've tried to not talk as much about it because it can be a little claustrophobic to feel like we don't have any options right now. But I have a special guest today, Mr. Peter C. Brooks. He is
Thank you very much.
the grandson of Cab Calloway, and he's going to talk a little bit about some new information that's come up about the demolition of the Cab Calloway house home, his former home, and he's going to give us a little bit more information on where they are with that because they're still in a court case right now. But
Mhm.
he's going to try to give me as much information as he can. Let us know some things that he has coming up, and we're gonna talk about some hot topics that's going on right now. But how you doing, Mr. Brooks?
I'm doing really good, Nate. Happy to be here. Always a pleasure. So proud of you, and so happy about
Thank
your
you.
viewers. I hope you enjoy the show. Can I get my shout out before we get started?
Go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right. Yeah, my shout out is to the students in the city schools, all of the young people, in fact, who are teenagers and younger, right now. I want you all to know that we are going to
Mm-hmm.
get through this and that this is really your opportunity to try to get ahead of everybody else. Try to learn as much as you can. If there's anything that you're curious about, check it out. Um, just start to get a hunger for knowledge and just getting ahead because some people are not going to make it out of this crisis. Some people are going to make it
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be weaker when they come out. And some people are going to be stronger as a result of this. And I want you to be one of the stronger ones by taking advantage of the opportunity. Yeah, and using it to get ahead.
You had
That's my
posted
show.
posted the other day, and it said the most beautiful things in life are not things; they're people and places and memories and pictures. They're feelings and moments and smiles and laughter. I personally am not a person that overreacts. I normally am good at problem solving and just staying cool under pressure, and I kind of pride myself on that type of training that I've got to be able to be that person. But in
It's
the
true.
moment like this, you have no other recourse but to overreact or panic, especially when you can't see the end. And I think this moment should be a lesson in faith and patience. Because a lot
Hmm.
of us are losing it because we don't have patience, and we're used to being able to see the end result. And right now we can't see that uh, based on our
But it's coming.
fears and just communication.
But the end is coming. It is coming. And I think, we are going to survive this. There's no question about it. And we're going to survive it intact. So, I just think it's a great opportunity to prepare ourselves because here's the reason why. They
Hmm.
can take everything away from you. You know what I mean? Everything. But they can't take your education away. The things you know are the
Hmm.
most valuable things that you have, really, you know. And that's why I talk so much about the value of history, because your history really is what makes it gives you value. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
one of the things that gives you value. So, yeah, that's why it can't take away your knowledge. It's the most valuable thing you have. And people who are smarter always have the advantage, man. And if them other kids use this as an opportunity to get smarter and you don't, they're going to have the advantage, and it's going to be a long term thing. I don't know if you're ever going to be able to catch up, So Yeah,
I was
it's very
a lot
competitive
of
out here. You know that.
conversations I've been having in the last couple of weeks, and some of my other guests from my other shows that we've been doing, that's been a common thread that I've been bringing up and that I've been in conversation about. This moment has put all of us in a space where we're all on the same playing field. Now, some people got a little bit more resource and a little bit more access, but none of us can really leave the house. None of us
Yeah,
supposed to be leaving the house. We're all on the same playing field. Oprah is locked in just like you locked in. She may got a
yeah,
couple more snacks and a couple more refrigerators than you got, and some generators and all those things, but we're really all creatively on the same path, right
yeah.
on the platform together. And it's really is a time for people who have been underserved
Hmm.
and underutilized to really take this opportunity to push
Yeah,
forward and get
yeah.
ahead. We've seen that with this the initiative that people are taking with their platforms. Everybody's online now. Everybody's communicating. Everybody are playing these games on their Facebook that's requiring people to talk to them and communicate in ways that we weren't even doing before. Everybody hated the social media because it kind of separated us, but it's the one thing that we have that can kind of connect all of us. And that's something that I've been seeing. Like we're all on the same playing field now.
It's really true, man.
Go ahead.
It's really true. And here's the thing about it, I think it really shows the importance of the arts because at a time like this, if you don't have culture, if you don't have the arts, man, you go crazy. Imagine if you didn't have music or movies or books or radio or the internet or anything like that, which are all considered the arts, you didn't have anything to look at or something. Man, you got to be kidding me. And that's really how we have to recover because we can't be as educated as them. So we got to use the arts because, like you said, that's a level playing field. Um, just like what people are experiencing now.
Mhm. And like here in Baltimore, we have a really huge discrepancy when it comes to people of color or in the arts world because we have public schools that aren't getting funding and arts organizations that are taking all the money. But now we're all scrambling for the same resources and we're all on the same page. This art organization doesn't have any more access than the other organizations have, and everything is having to be out front. People can't
Yeah,
lie like they were able to before. They
yeah,
can't hide things because now we all need it. And everybody's being public with what they're getting and what the resources are. And I appreciate the arts community because everybody's listing a number of grants and a number of resources and things that everybody has access to. And I'm starting to see some type of favoritism, but it's still being outweighed by public knowledge. And people can't hide behind, a desk anymore or a title.
it's true.
Everybody is, they close down all theaters. Nobody can do theaters. It's not just center stage that has the money or Broadway. When they closed down Broadway, I realized how significant this was. I realized how uh, where this was going at. And this is a time where Broadway was the pinnacle, but now everything is closed. Everything is black right now. In terms of some of the things that you have going on, how have you had to kind of shift or flex a little bit?
Well, thank God I still got a job. I mean, it doesn't pay a lot of money, but I'm telling you, man, I'm just holding on to that as best I can. But what I did was I took the time to start to read my Uncle George's book. My Uncle George had written a book. Dang, I'm trying to think of where it is now, but I'm recording it as a book on tape because he writes from what I remember of my grandfather, Cab Calloway, and so he was more into his life. We were all trying to live our own lives and stuff, but George really served my grandfather, and so he got to know him really intimately, and he wrote down his memories and stuff in a book. I think it's beautiful. I'm just trying to get all this technology and stuff to work right, but yeah, that's what I'm gonna have a book on tape coming out, and then I do podcasts as well. Mine are guided meditations. They're just spiritual experiences to try to help people to feel better, to heal them, to deal with this thing, you know what I mean? Resilience, you know what I mean? And even if it doesn't, you know, change your life and last for days or whatever, at least for the 10 minutes you're with me on a guided meditation, it's all gone. So that's what I'm trying to do. And yeah.
Can you tell us about your Uncle George a little bit and what he was trying to do in his book?
Oh, George, man. Well, he just wanted to share what it was like to be backstage with a star like that. George was responsible. The main thing back then was you had about 15 different musicians, and each musician had to get their own music. The music for the piano was different than the music for the drums or the alto sax or the tenor sax or the trumpets and all that. And so each song also had to have its own sheet of music. So it was hundreds of sheets of music for every instrument. And it all had to be organized before the show, collected after the show, assembled, and get into Cab's car before he left. And so George was responsible for that, as well as helping him dress and stuff like that. And he really did, by George's commitment to my grandfather, he really did extend his career and stuff, because my grandfather was too proud a man to ask for help from people. But if you were on his team and stuff and he trusted you, he felt vulnerable around you, then he would accept your help. But for the most part, he was not going to hire a valet or hire, you know, if somebody sent him a chauffeur, he would do it. But otherwise, he insisted on driving himself.
That's a surprise. That a lot of people were kind of branching out from what their upbringing was, and he had a big scope. And me just learning who you were in the last couple of years and just reading more on him, I saw how wide stretched his reach was in terms of the arts world and the many different people who he had worked with, and how he was revolutionizing how the artist worked. He wasn't just, you know, I liken him today to, say, a Quincy Jones, who didn't have one genre and was
Or
kind
Dimitri Reeves.
right.
Dimitri Reeves, man, which, you know, brings us up.
Mhm.
I mean, we've lost Vaughn Mason. I mean, we got to deal with that at some point, because you and I were vibing it earlier, man. It's a major loss for us, and but
Can you
and nobody knows what to do.
can you I've met Vaughn before, but can you tell us a little bit, if you don't know Vaughn Mason, he lives here in Baltimore. He's a phenomenal musician, artist, and management, and works with the arts community in terms of the music art community here. Can you tell us, one, you were really close with him? Can you tell us?
What, did you freeze on me? I'm gonna keep going then, just in case.
Can
Yeah,
you tell us?
so
Go ahead.
we're
Go
back
ahead.
on art. Good. Yeah. So Vaughn, I didn't know Vaughn very well, but I know he came to my classes to guest speak, because when I was at Coppin, I always believed that it was much better for the students to be exposed to actual professionals who were working in the field. And so I wanted to get a broad range of people, and obviously he
Mhm.
represented, you know, music representation, which I thought was a viable career for students coming out of Coppin. Um, and he was just excellent. He was just excellent, generous, kind, knowledgeable, and just shared what he had with the people, it from the bottom of his heart. You know what I mean? He meant every word he said and stuff. I didn't stay in touch with him. I hadn't heard his name in years until I heard he passed. And then I was like, wow, that gem of a man who I knew back in the day. You know what I mean? And then when I heard he was
Mhm.
associated with Dimitri, it just all fit together. And I think, you know, all of those people have really tapped on the same type of spiritual uh, river or avenue that my grandfather did, Cab Calloway, which is expressing to people the appreciation for life. You know, it's tough, it's unfair, it's unbelievable, but we're here. And that
Mhm.
sure beats being there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what they're all about. They're not trying to like settle a score or prove themselves as more talented than other people or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's all about just somehow expressing the purity of love. Um, you know what I mean? So
When
yeah,
it comes to our Black art community, when it comes to our Black arts community here in Baltimore, how do you think we can work on preserving their history? We have the Edgar Allan Poe. We have a lot of different non-Black artists from the city that get represented in their houses and their buildings, and their namesake lives on. But if we don't build monuments or statues, they're lost. You know, and I'm thinking of a lot of people that came before us, their families and certain organizations are keeping their name alive, but that's a handful compared to how many people in our community. How do you
well,
work on preserving their history?
it's tough. I mean, my of course, you know, people say a museum and stuff, and that's a really ambitious thing. And I had read where some person who was in charge of an association of museums had stated that 1/3 of all museums in the United States will not open after this pandemic is over. So museums are going to have a really hard way to go, and they always have. They were before this thing. You know what I mean? So. I mean, we also were thinking about affordable housing. I think now with the change, as you said, that's taking place in society, everything has to be looked through that filter. And so we can't think of, you know, we thought of a museum as a repository of things, but then the repository has to be somehow practical or useful. It has to produce content. It has to contribute. Um, it may be enough for it to sit there, but it also has to be like an active breathing thing in the community. And so, you know, when you think about Cab Calloway, you're talking about, and this is where it's so similar to people like Dimitri Reeves and Michael Jackson and even Marvin Gaye, you know, it's music, dance, clothing, radio, television, movies, literature. It's a lot, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. And starting in the 1920s, animation, I forgot, you know, he's a key figure in animation. So it takes a big vision. And I think if you encompass all of that, it's got to be a multi-dimensional type place like that you haven't seen before in Baltimore, but you know, where, for example, the production is in the same place as the marketing and the public relations. So you get all this stuff done at once. You go in, you record, and it's automatically being distributed, you know, in real time. And that's the future type of museum that, you know what I mean, I'm talking about. So that it's got this constant, you know, revenue stream and population that's moving through it, but not physically online, just checking it out to see what's going on. I think, you know, you also can't tell the story of Cab Calloway without talking about mentorship, because mentorship was big to him, big. Not only was he mentored by Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington and Chick Webb, but, you know, he turned around and mentored other people like Nat King Cole, Jackie Wilson, um, even, you know, my Uncle George. You know, if my mom had gone to him and said, "Oh, help me with my son," he would have been like, "Yeah, bring him on. I'll show him. I'll show him what it's like." You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, mentorship was a big. He would never turn down an opportunity if somebody asked him for help. And so yeah, that's another, you know, component of it. So it's a lot. It's a lot to think about, and I think it's more than one person can do. I mean, the community's got to be involved. But my point to the community is just that there's value there. You know what I mean? You don't want to destroy something that could be worth something. You know, that don't make much sense, really. And I'll tell you what, too, man. I mean, I don't want to get political on the show, but the fact is,
No, you find this. I want this information because right now, this last couple of weeks that we've been in, I guess I've been watching a lot more documentaries, and I was actually watching a few on Quincy Jones, and that was something that he contributes to
epic,
all that he knows. You know, because he
epic.
came from the same humble beginnings as his granddad, And without the mentorship that he got within the music, he wouldn't have been able to surpass many of the people who taught him. And your uncle was one of the people that your grandfather was one of the people that he named as somebody who he didn't have a direct connection to him, but he was able to meet him and be able to deal with him and learn from him in the
Mhm.
process. And he got so much valuable information just based off of the mentorship. And I think that's one of the ways that a lot of artists will be able to carry on the legacy of many of these people like Cab Calloway or UB Blake or
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
such.
And I think, Barack knows that too. I mean, his whole thing is about mentorship. And I mean, like I said, I mean, I feel it's appropriate in this thing to give credit where credit is due,
He didn't know
because
anything
I
about
tell you,
getting onto this thing.
the
I
only
can't get on
person,
there. He's on there and I'm trying to get on there. And
Oh.
did I lose y'all? Yep, I did. I lost, all right, so if I'm still alive, I'm gonna tell you right now, the only person who helped me out was Deru Wagner Raja. Man, that came through and helped me. I'm telling you, when the chips are down, if you need
I
somebody
thought I did
on
the
your
chat,
side,
but that doesn't seem to be going on. He's on video. I can't get back to it.
We're still
But they sent it
yeah,
to
I'm on
everyone.
video. I'm
you
taking
can
over
hear
your show. Your show belongs to me
Hello,
now.
hello,
Hello.
hello.
I can
give me
hear
a
you.
second. I'm engineer's coming back, so you'll be brought into the show in just a few moments. Just give me a couple seconds.
Hello.
So I guess I'm there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
I'm sorry. We
Is
can't
it?
hear you now.
You can't hear me? Okay. I'm really working really hard to get on and to get into this
It's fine.
conversation. That well, howdy ho to you. This is
So you're
Cecilia.
on.
Is she on? Can y'all hear her?
Yes. So
Take over, Ed. Oh,
yes. So
shut
Miss
it down. Y'all in
Cecilia,
for a real treat now.
give us give us a second, because my engineer have to get you on. So just give me a couple more minutes, and you'll be on with your nephew.
Oh, thank
All
you,
right.
darling.
So
Thank you.
Y'all are in for
you
a
have it.
real
Keep it the way you
treat,
have it.
boy.
Everything is fine. Keep it to the line. Once my engineer gets back on, he'll bring you right into it.
Okay, dear.
Y'all are
Thank
in for a
you.
real treat. My
Well,
Aunt
thank.
Cecilia performed with Cab Calloway. She got more talent in her pinky toenail than I'm probably gonna have my whole life. I mean, Aunt Lael, boy, she can sing, and she's got just pure emotion and knowledge and commitment. I think she's got her, priorities straight.
So, Mr.
What's
Brooks, she isn't live with us yet, so the audience
that?
can't hear yet. So we gonna hold her on hold for a second, and while I'm waiting on my engineer to get back on, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions.
All
In the
right.
meantime, one thing, what are you doing right now? Or I'll ask you this: can you give some information on how you were able to do more research and kind of help bring your uncle's legacy to be? Like, what are
How
some of
I
the
was
things that you did to kind of preserve his history and his story?
okay. See, what was I doing when my uncle was with him?
So right now, so the question, what we were talking about before was just keeping people's legacy alive. And one of the
Right,
things
right,
we wanted to talk to you about was how can you give us some pointers in how you are
right.
kind of keeping your uncle's legacy alive? Like, what are some of the things that you having to do
I
to keep
think
that
I
legacy
think
alive?
I think the main thing is to talk about it, and make it relevant for the kids of today. You know what I mean? In some way, and that's what I tried to do, was to show how Cab was related to hip hop and stuff. And I didn't really see that until I went to the house. So there's some kind of value in having the artifacts of your ancestors. And so I think that's perhaps the first thing, is try to retain the oldest thing that's within your family, because there may be somebody who comes along that can understand this stuff. But yeah, I think talking about it, thinking about it, participating in your grandparents or parents' legacy, whatever that is, it's sort of a natural thing for you, because families tend to stick to a certain career. Like, we're a showbiz kind of family, and you won't find too many accountants and stuff when we have a family reunion. You feel me? You know what I mean? So if you got teachers in your family, your grandparents and stuff, you probably got some strength there, you know what I mean, that you can call upon and stuff. So yeah, and in our spirituality, I got my 4 directions up in there. Yeah, man, your ancestors are everything. Your ancestors are who placed you here. You know what I mean? You owe your ancestors everything you've got. And your number one mission in life is not to let them down. And the law that they left upon us was that we must always think of the next generation. And that's the great law of peace, as codified by the Iroquois nation in about 1200 AD in this particular land. And even though it was only codified then, it was still an operating rule of law. And that is that you would always not think of yourself, not think of your family or even your generation. If you were a leader and you were making this decision, you were to think of the 7th generation to come. Man, you can't even imagine that far ahead. Your grandchildren's 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 grandchildren. So, but that's how serious, we took it, you know what I mean? So, so ancestors are a real key part to that. And it's all like forming a continuum. And yeah, it's,
So you're speaking controlling the you're speaking about controlling the oral story, the narrative of who the person was, and the actual like artifacts from the person.
Bring history alive.
Most important things to kind of preserve.
Yeah, talk about it. How many people know about Chick Webb? What was he about? Where did he come from? He's from East Baltimore, but why is he a big deal? How many people know about Snake Hips? He's from Baltimore. Ethel Ennis and all these other people we named. We have to use those as like a source of pride. You know what I mean? Like football teams do players, when we mention Ray Lewis and stuff like that. And I don't know why we don't do that with our music and our art and our culture and stuff. But I think it's important that we start, we start somewhere. And so, if we can start here, this is great. This is a superb place to start from, because this location, Druid Hill Avenue, I have a really sound argument, y'all. I put it out there on the internet and everywhere, and nobody can really defeat it. I mean, we know that the Bronx was the first place when they actually started the technology of rap and hip hop music. But Druid Hill Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland is where all that stuff first began. Baltimore is the capital, really, of 20th century and 21st century.
And listening to you speak, one of the things that's been coming to me is, so here in Baltimore, we have a thing with our public school system. So a lot of the names that are put on our public schools are actual Black people, primarily from Baltimore, that are being named. You spoke about the Druid Hill area. I'm thinking about Booker T. Washington and Furman L.
Frederick Douglass.
A lot of the school names, most people don't even realize Frederick Douglass. That was the first school for colored children and first high school for colored children in the United States. And the location of it is still here. But a lot of those names as we are moving into a new system of charter schools, a lot of those names are being taken off and being named for something now. How do we preserve those names and that legacy? Is there a legal way we can keep those names from being changed?
I'm gonna tell you the only way to do it. I'm gonna tell you from my experience in trying to preserve something in Baltimore. At the same time that I was trying to preserve my grandfather's house and what I felt was all this portion of Black history. The people in Woodbury were trying to preserve a streetcar factory. And because they showed up at the meeting en masse and had a lawyer, they got their thing landmark recognized, and Cab Calloway's thing was nothing. I had people up there, grant you, and people spoke. I had some beautiful people, man. Reba Hawkins, man. Reba, it's real. It's real. So it's not that, you know what I mean? But it just wasn't enough of them. There wasn't a crowd there to intimidate them. And of course, now coming in a crowd is kind of dangerous, but you still have the numbers, you know what I mean? You have to write to them, email them, call them, be persistent. You're fighting City Hall. Nothing in life is easy. You got to fight. You got to not give up. You have to wear people out. And that's the only thing I can advise you in
But
terms
it's still a
of
black and
don't
white
take no for an answer.
It's still a black and white. It's still very much so a black and white issue. I've been working with, and I'm not saying it's easy on any side, but I clearly can see how things get done in our community versus how things get done in other communities. And I've been in the last couple of years working with an organization that's representing someone in the city, a person who was here and created the first museum, purpose-built museum in the United States. And I'm not saying their job is easy, but I can see how much easier it is getting things done when you have the right complexity. And I don't like
Let me
making
just
things a black
say,
and white. It is really sad how things get done that way.
let me just say something to the African American people who are watching this right now.
Mm-hmm.
You are the strongest, most beautiful, most resilient, most creative, most generous, most giving, most happy, most spiritual, really, people on earth. Don't forget it. And don't blow it. Don't blow it. By the same token, we also have some type of virus that prevents us from working together for the common good, along the lines of the Native American type of legal system. We got to get it together. We got to get it together. No one else, no other race. I mean, check this out. You want something for that area? I mean, how about a museum of the history of the Black man in America? You're talking about pre-colonialism in Africa, surviving that. You're talking about the Middle Passage, when those ships were at war with one another, the Dutch and the British and the French, and if they saw a slave ship, they just sink it, no problem. And most of the slaves ended up in South America, in Brazil, and in the Caribbean. Very few ended up here in North America. Then you've got slavery itself.
Make sure I'm hitting up against.
Nobody else can survive that. That's all I'm trying to say. Nobody else has survived that. And that is your strength. That is your foundation. That is what you build off of. That's why you walk in a place like, yeah, because you got it. You did that. Nobody can say that. Nobody.
And I love museums that tell culture, but I fell in love with the Smithsonian Museum of African American History for that very reason, because it gave such a detailed perspective. And it's still not our whole story, but it gave such a detailed perspective on starting from slavery in this country and moving up into the present day. And I don't think any one museum has been able to capsulize that in one
right. And my argument is, yeah. And my argument is that it should be a more educational experience, a processing place, a decolonization factory. You know what I mean? We're a place where you can clean your mind, and it's designed to be that. It's not a museum. It's actually a center of decolonization, of deconstruction of colonialism. Truth and reconciliation.
What do you think that would?
About
Can you
drugs.
give?
Say again?
Can you give me a glimpse as to what that would look like, or what that would feel like, or?
Well, the only closest thing I know to it is, like the Truth and Reconciliation centers that they had in South Africa. It's a place where people come and they discuss this issue. They have an experience related to this issue, and they admit and confess their role in perpetuating it, and they kind of, you know what I mean, clear themselves in a way, or try to, I can't say, offer tribute or renunciation for all of the benefits that we've gotten as a result of the way things were back then. So yeah,
How would that look here? Would we be able to do a microfilm of that in a city like Baltimore?
There is one in Richmond, Virginia, at Shockoe Harbor. Shockoe Harbor. Shockoe Harbor was the #1, or one of the second, maybe the second busiest destination for slaves just coming off of the boat. They would come to Richmond. The slaves would actually be traded and sold a lot in Baltimore. Baltimore was an excellent trading place for slaves. It was considered, it was the place where people just like to do that. So, yeah, that's becoming a Truth and Reconciliation Center for human bondage, and so that is a model that I saw and started looking at. But
I want to get into
it. I would love to see what that would actually look like.
It's got
in a city like this.
It's got the National Trust for Historic Preservation has it on there, and it's got like 5 things. It's got like, I don't know them all exactly, but you can look it up on their website. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, Shockoe Harbor, Richmond, Virginia. But it's got like a education center, I think a refuge center, an education, like apprenticeship type of thing, and it's just a center for people who are trying to deal with, and then I think a museum or instructional, public instructional component to it, and it's a thing for people who are trying to deal with the idea and the history of human bondage in their background. And so it's programmed specifically like that. Like the Smithsonian is programmed to offer an experience to as many different people as possible. But these are more specific to deal with an issue, you know what I mean, experience, and with a specific kind of outcome, which is renunciation, decolonization, redemption, if you will, on some level. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's a beginning, you know what I mean? And because from there, you can't just say, yeah, I've done this and it's over. It's not like
what is it that they want you to do?
Muslims that go to the Hajj or Jews that go to the Wailing Wall. You've got to live that from having been there for the rest of the year, really the rest of your life, you know what I mean? Because you never know when you get a chance to go back. And that's what it's about.
What would it take to do something like that in a city like this, in terms of resources? Is it really expensive, or is it something that would it be a financial thing, or would that be something that we could utilize resources that we already have going?
I mean, it takes cooperation. And it takes, I think, people just creating a buzz about it and not taking no for the answer. That's how you get a Reginald Lewis Museum. That's how you get a National Aquarium. Somebody in the National Aquarium, is a case in point, William Donald Schaefer was like, hey, we are doing this, and I don't care what anybody says. And everybody saw the vision and they just cooperated on it. And that was it. He said, look, we got to do tourism. The Smithsonian does not have a good aquarium. If we have an aquarium and build on our natural history as a aquatic economic powerhouse with the Chesapeake Bay, we can make this happen. We can leverage. It's consistent with our brand. So yeah, it takes. I mean, it takes everybody being at the table. Micah, Coppin, I mean, yeah, as well as the government. It's a team effort. It's like bringing the Olympics to a place. But yes, there are resources for that. But people have got to see the vision, and it certainly can't be obstructed at the very local level. I mean, it's got to be at least somewhat accepted and approved upon and supported, because it requires that. It's got to have, a thing through and through. People participate in the marketplace because they feel safe. They feel their trust, they can trust the marketplace. If I give you my money, you will give me what I want, and it will be satisfactory to me at the end of the day. And if it's not, we can negotiate a settlement and everyone will walk away content. All right. If you don't have those basic rules in place, then it's very difficult to build anything. And so we first have to begin sort of a cultural revolution to tell ourselves we are going to be cooperative, we are going to be civil, we're going to be kind, we're going to be friendly, we're going to be helpful, and all of these types of things, so that people feel comfortable around us and they feel like they can spend their money and show their money and, you know what I mean, show love for us and respect for our culture. As long as they're afraid of us, yeah, it makes us feel great, you know what I mean? But we're all by ourselves, and that's not. So being fearful is cool, and you got it. You know what I mean? You've proven that creating fear in people and stuff can get them to obey and follow your thing. But yeah, you end up all alone because nobody wants to deal with you. So it's best, I think.
I wanna real quick. I wanna be. We can't see it on. We'll be able to. We'll be able to hear her. So I want to see if she can still hear me.
I can still hear you.
Yeah.
And okay, if you
Hello?
tell me how I can do the video thing, I would do that as well. But yes, I can still hear you, and I would love to join the conversation.
We can hear you right now, though, so they'll at least be able to hear you, and then in a few minutes we'll be able to bring the video part up as well. Can you first introduce yourself to anybody who may not know who you are?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Cecilia Lael Calloway. I am one of the daughters of the iconic Cab Calloway. I am a historian. I am an author. An educator, and I'm here to bring the resolution with our ancestors.
Oh.
And
what has it meant? I mean, beyond.
Okay, I can't hear you.
Beyond Cab Calloway being your.
Okay, you're going in and out there.
Beyond Cab Calloway being your father. Beyond Cab Calloway being your father, can you tell me what it has meant to you to keep his legacy alive?
Well, how long do you have? No, just kidding, dear. Beyond my father, I believe that we need to go back further than my father. What was the beautiful part of that whole era? I'll get to that. I'll go there first, and then I will go backwards. What the beautiful aspect of that whole generation of, we can name them, was the fact that they were first and foremost humanitarians. which people just look at entertainers, you know, as being just that. They're there to entertain. They did not, and they have not. And this is what we have to pass on to our children, is that it is a matter of working together, being together. That whole era of people really believed in helping one another.
That's true.
They protected one another. They really believed in, I've got a bean, you got half of it. They did rent parties. They saw to it that everyone was taken care of the best way that they could. They protected one another through a horrific time. They protected one another. Okay, so we're going through a pandemic right now, but they went through the Great Depression.
And a pandemic of their own.
And the pandemic, absolutely. And what they did is that they worked with one another. They had rent parties. They saw to it that everybody could get their rent paid. The young ladies that came into let's just use the Cotton Club as an example, from the Lena Hornes to the Ella Fitzgeralds to the Billie Holidays we can run the gamut. These young ladies, they protected them.
Yes, that's right.
They were family. That was the true meaning of what the word was. And where did that come from? That came from our ancestors. I'm not talking about those that they just brought over on the slave ships and so on and so forth. Let's go back to what our history and where our ancestors truly came from. Okay, let's go back to the beautiful we had empires, we had colleges, we had education, we had beautiful homes, we were taking care of one another, we were raising our children, we had and yes, it came over, and it was just they took us out of there. It was just totally and completely demolished. How do you think that our ancestors were able to create all of the things that they were able to create, which we never got credit for? And we're just beginning to get some kind of credit for. But this is the history that our children need to know. They need to know where they come from, truly where they come from. And it's not being taught. It's not being expressed. What do they know? What they know? Oh yeah, okay, well, okay, fine, that's great, whatever. But they don't understand they come from royalty. We are royalty.
And here's the thing that's so interesting about that. It's not important to them whether they came from Italy or France or Britain or whatever, but it's important to us where we came from. You know what I mean? It's the key to our survival and our continued existence, really.
Yeah, well, who are you referring to is not important to who are them.
Whoever.
Yeah, no, it can't be whoever. What has to be important, as far as I'm concerned, it has to be important to us, for us to really educate our children.
Yep. And
otherwise, it is lost. It is lost.
Yeah.
Now, what my dad did, or what your grandfather did, okay, was monumental. And it is known all over the world. And the travesty is that it's known all over the world, and right here in Baltimore, they want to destroy it. And it's wrong.
How do you think we can turn around the educational system here in Baltimore for people of color? What do you think is going to take to get us back to a point where we have reverence?
Got to do it ourselves. Got to do it ourselves, and got to make it important. Just make it a priority.
You have to go from the inside out. And to do that, yes, we have to do it. Yes, we have to go into the community. And yes, we cannot continue to fight the fight,
Mhm.
but fight the fight with knowing there's one most important thing, what it's all about, and people don't get it. It's all about love.
Mm.
That's all it's about. What, right now, what we're going through, if we don't wise up and understand that it's not fear, we cannot live in fear. We have to live in faith. And that's what they did back in my dad's era.
Yes.
And that's what they did back in from the Songhai people all the way to just look at the Songhai. Look at the Songhai. That was a nation. We had kings and queens. I mean, our children don't know that. But they
No,
did it.
yeah.
Where do you think? Oh, well, it takes a village. Does it take a village? What is a village?
Mm.
And a lot of that was faith in each other. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because we saw
Absolutely.
ourselves doing some pretty extraordinary things on a kind of a regular basis. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree.
Can you tell us, and Mr. Brooks has been able to paint a picture for me and my listeners, but can you give us that image of Baltimore that you remember?
I was not raised in Baltimore.
Okay.
I was raised in New York.
Okay.
I was born in New York. I was raised in New York.
A
My
whole different world, boy.
Yes, it was, but I mean, I spent many years here. Later in life, I lived in not in Baltimore. I lived in Howard County. Lived out in
Yep.
Columbia, and but worked at the UB Blake Center, and you did a lot of things here in Baltimore.
Mhm.
My major education about Baltimore was through my dad, was through my sister, Kamei, was through some other relatives that I have, within this area. And what I experienced when I was here at at an older part of my life. I mean, I'm only 21 now, so it couldn't have been. Let me stop. um, um, what
Yeah,
I
our family in Baltimore goes way back. I mean, way back. The credits and the Reeds and Fortunes. It goes
I,
way back.
I got you, Betty Dorr.
Yeah, it goes way back.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And then you look at the migration of our family, or my dad. I've done history in reference to the Calloway family back to 1815,
Mhm.
dealing with they started in Virginia on a
Mhm.
plantation it was the Calloway Plantation in Nelson County, Virginia. And I've gone through the legacy of that, and it's very interesting. And then I also have correlated it with the music of that time.
Yeah.
And Baltimore is like, oh, it's so hard to explain, but it isn't hard to explain. We have been lied to. Well, we've always been lied to in many, many ways. And it's just been a process that we just cannot give up on. And that's what they, as Peter said, them, that's what they're waiting for us to do. And we have to come together. That was the major thing that whatever did to the African American race. They separated us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They separated us. They have us against us. But
Can you see? I've said with Mr. Brooks before. One of the hardships in my life was not being able to be raised by my great grandmother, but not knowing that I would be this person today that was interviewing people about their life and not asking her enough questions? What does it feel like to be able to trace your family back to at least a orientation? Because most of us don't know our family outside of a grandmother or a grandparent. But what does it feel like to be able to trace your family back that far?
Oh, it's a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
Expands your
For,
imagination too.
for me, it really is, and I think that it would. I know it would be a wonderful experience for our children just to know that there is something tangible within their lives instead of just you know waking up every morning and seeing the travesties that
Right.
are happening around them.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's right.
If they could know, if they had something tangible so that they could know that this is where they come from, that this is what this is really what you are all about, my darlings.
Yeah, and it's made just for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Gosh.
And it's and that again is part of the travesty. What is happening here and other places? Baltimore. It's not just in Baltimore.
Mhm.
That they are tearing down all things that are tangible. Then we will create these wonderful museums. Okay, finally. And how are the children going to get there?
Right.
How are they going to be exposed to it? Okay, well, there's a real cool museum downtown called Reginald Lewis, and
Mhm.
I'm worrying about Joe over here, or I'm dealing with this over there, or I'm worrying about hopefully I can duck and not deal the bullets.
Yeah.
We
How,
have to do it from the inside out, and that means you got to you got to go out there, you got to get on the grounds, and we got to work together. That's the biggest travesty of it all, and that is how they
Mhm,
won or have won and
mhm,
continue winning, because they work on keeping us separated.
mhm. While they stand elbow to elbow,
Mhm.
hip to hip. Yep. Yeah.
Do
I
you
mean,
think that would be the change that would happen within us as a community if we were more connected to our roots in that way? If more of us would do Alex Haley and really go back and research, do you think that would be the change in our community?
oh
I mean, look at how much roots affected us. I mean, gosh, yeah, it changed everything.
no, I feel that yes, that would definitely change, but you at this point within with where the world stands at, and where we stand at as a people. Okay, we have to get our children's attention. And you're
Mm,
not going to get it by just coming on and saying, oh, yeah, I know about Martin Luther King. And no,
yeah.
no, you got to go inside and get to their little beings. They're sponges. They're sponges if you expose them to it. And that takes, you got to get around. Of course, you got the generation of their parents. There
Right.
are no more, there are very, very few grandmoms.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the grandmothers are 30 years old or 20 years old, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so they don't have any roots.
As a school teacher, one of the things that I do at the beginning of every year is I photocopy all these images and I paste them around the room. And one of the things that I see is missing, and I'm only 36, but one of the things that I see that is missing is this that astonishment of who these people are.
Mhm.
And I think I can't speak for everybody in my generation, but I know there was a big emphasis for Pan Africanism and just that whole identity of who we were as Black people. And I just see an absence of concern, not even from just the parents or the administration, but just the students don't have that eagerness to kind of know who these people were. They're not astonished with the things that they were able to be have accomplished. It's just not there anymore, and that scares me because that means our history is possibly going to be erased. And it's going to be ongoing.
And only we can.
And I tell you what, if as an example, if I'm honest, just try that in the Jewish community. You know what I mean? You guys know their history, boy. Try that even in the American community. You know what I mean? You put up pictures of these great people, George Washington, and people are gonna have reverence for it. But the fact that we don't have reverence for our own history, I mean, that means we're being set up. You know what I mean? We're being set up because it's not good. It's not good. It's not,
Now,
you know what I mean? I don't think, but
well, now, Nate, I have a book that I am working with and publicizing and speaking on and going into schools, and it's called The Pride in the Journey.
yes.
Okay.
And it's about famous Africans and African Americans. And what it does is it brings yesterday to today. And it has 100 colored painted prints
Beautiful.
done by Lawrence Williams.
Mhm.
And the late Lawrence Williams, which his work is in the Smithsonian. And then there is a 400-word biography that goes with each hero. Now, my whole thing is educating ethnic heritage, education, and engaging. You, being a teacher, know that you can stand up there and talk to these children, but if you don't engage them,
Right.
it's a moot point.
Mhm.
So I would like to, show it to you, let you glean from it.
It's
And
important.
also, what I do is when I do my workshops or I go into the schools, we read. There are 100 different heroes in here, going way back to Songhai, all the way up to today. To Obama and my dad, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
We read. Number one, there you go. You got to know how to read. I don't mean punching in on your phone or your computer or whatever. You got to read. You got to learn. You got to understand that, we created algebra.
Right.
We created trigonometry. Yeah.
And letters themselves, yeah.
So what I do is that
Arabic.
we go through, we pick out different heroes, and then we read, and then I pick out those certain students or whatever, whoever, and I have them pick out which one of the heroes that they want to relate to. Then I give them a little bit of time, and then I let them become that hero.
Mhm.
It is remarkable. Why? Because I'm making them engage.
Nice. Nice.
And that's not something that they're going to forget.
That's
Because
right.
they felt like they've been in the shoes before. And me coming from
Yeah.
the theater world, that makes a difference when they feel
Yes, sir.
invested in the story versus just being a participant or a spectator.
Everybody remembers that. Everybody. Right now. Just sit and watch it.
So,
Just remember they did stuff
so that if you go back to my dad's era and all of the wonderful archonic people that were within that era, that was coming out of the slavery era and so on and so forth, that's what they did.
Mhm.
They engaged on all different levels. That's what the white folks don't want us to do. Why did they separate us?
Mhm.
See, that's what grandmothers did. They said, boy, come over here and sit down.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're not going to do what? Excuse me?
No, they did it because it was fun. They enjoyed seeing us fight each other. They really did.
Well, that was their gold.
Right.
And they're still winning because we are allowing it.
It's scary in a moment like this. For me, I've never gone through anything like this. This crisis that we're in right now, and the scary part of it is I feel like we are being brought further away from who we are. You spoke about being able to read. That is the biggest issue in any school right now. And it's always been an issue. Children learning how to read is difficult. But the disconnect now is there's no home partnership with a school base. So right now, we're all scrambling as teachers and administrators and leaders in the school system in how to continue school right now, because we know if we come back next fall, these children are going to be so far back that it's going to be hard to move them forward. So I appreciate someone like yourself that is still going into the school, still sharing this, because this is one of the reasons that I became a teacher or artist in any means, because I had examples of people who looked like me that came to my school and taught me about my history. But that doesn't happen in that way anymore. There's a curriculum that needs to be taught, and it does not include us. We're not included in that curriculum in terms of history or just how we're being talked about, the narrative. We're not included.
Yeah. And you see the result, what happens when you don't include us.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And just like with hip hop, we have to do it ourselves. You know what I mean? If you don't know how to read, or your children don't know how to read, or you're even insecure about them reading or whatever, have them read to you. All right? Just get them practiced and stuff. That's what my mom did to me. She'd sit there, we'd go on a trip, she'd let me read the whole time. And I know it drove her crazy, but that's what you gotta do.
But functional illiteracy is not a new thing. It's just now we know we have a word for it. We have a phrase for it. But that is something, but the gap is getting so much larger. People are functionally illiterate. You can capture how to count at some point. You'll get it. But reading is because you're disconnected from anything that can improve you.
Can't tolerate that for your children. We can't tolerate it.
Yeah, well, you say you can't tolerate it, but you know, we have to do something about it. You're not all children have computers. It's remarkable. You go into these different places, and if you get someone that is dealing with a cash register, and they have to make change on their own, 9 out of 10 of them cannot do it.
Yeah.
Okay? That's by design. That's by design. Your children, they don't know how to sign their name. They're not taught how to write. So if you don't know how to write, then then what are words?
Yeah.
But it takes dedication, and it takes engagement. We have to use the gift that God gave us, and that is creativity.
Yeah.
We have to use it's a battle. And yes, this situation is happening now does not make it any easier.
Amen. Shout out to your son, my nephew, cousin, whatever, Matt, man, who's on the front lines of this thing, you know. And Matt is the person who, like you said, he lives and breathes this stuff. Dude, what's the name of his most recent child?
Ramesses.
Yeah.
Ramesses.
Pharaoh.
Yes.
Pharaoh.
But it's a huge mountain, but there ain't no mountain high enough.
Man.
And I look at.
How do you think we can?
Go ahead.
How do you? I'm sorry. How do you think? Because in speaking to Mr. Brooks, I've learned a lot about just that the emphasis of education within your family. How do you think that we can get to a point where I know one of the things is the parents have to now become educated, but how do you think we can get to a place where we are more empowered and we can actually do something with that empowerment?
I think we can become more empowered by numbers.
Coming
The
together.
more that we can come together and have people like you and me and Peter and Mary and this one and that one and whatever, and we go into the communities, and we get to our children, and we get to the children's parents. Some are lost.
Right, right.
I mean, let's call it like it is. But they're lost, but they still, that innate, which is God given. They don't want to see their children lost, even if they don't understand it.
Mm.
And it's hard. I mean, what these children are experiencing is difficult. By the time they get to school, they've gone through a whole. It's very difficult. And now with the schools being closed, where are they? What environments are they in all the time now?
Yeah. And
So we've got to come up with a way to get to them through this pandemic, and
coach them up.
Yeah, even reading children, it's remarkable when I'm reading these stories, or get them to and we go through them, word by word, and they'll learn these words and they'll understand it. Because if they didn't understand it, then they couldn't become these heroes.
Right, right.
You see what I'm saying? And I mean, it's just a matter of being there with them and interacting. Of course, right now it's hard to get to them because we're dealing with this social distancing and so on and so forth. But I don't think you're going to find too much social distancing down there on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right, right.
And
words, what do you think was the divide? When did the divide start? Or this happened?
When did this happen?
What happened?
What happened? Let's go back to I think that divide started happening. Let's go back to maybe 3,700 years ago. Okay, let's. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? That's when it started. Let's start there.
But I mean, recently, I would say it was the assassination of Dr. King and Malcolm X, just like that. Mr. Kennedy. But Dr. King, really, that messed us up, man. Because suddenly, as a man, you were afraid. If they killed Dr. King, they kill anybody.
Well, I mean, what could be more fearful than you be laying up in your house, and here comes your brother that's coming and taking you away from your family, from your land, from your home, from everything. How much more fear can you have then? What do you think they're dealing with now? They're dealing with fear.
True.
Dealing with fear. We have to, but they had faith. That's how we've gotten as far as we've gotten now. You hear people say, not children, but older people, or just middle age or whatever. People say, "Oh man, this is so hard out here," or whatever. I just can't make it. I said, "Excuse me? What if your ancestors said, I can't make it?"
Yeah.
You would not be here now.
That's right.
That was a 24/7 they were dealing with making it.
But then you just said this now, those things are the things that are missing. We aren't seeing family units together. Everybody is in their own, like right now is a prime example of what our culture has looked like for many years now. We're in our own home, in our own rooms, and now you got parents competing with their children for opportunities and for a way out and a way up. Now it's not even about, I'm gonna make sure all my nieces and all my cousins are good. Now I'm just worried about what's happening in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a total disregard for how we all can make it. And if we all making it, then we all making it. And if you help this young man go to college, then he will come back and help us. But now we're worried because we've sent too many away and they haven't come back. So how do we get back to that space of being able to trust each other, but being able to help each other at the same time?
Cultural revolution. That's all.
That faith and tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
Faith and tenacity. That's what our ancestors had.
Right.
Faith and tenacity. Yes, we have been separated. Please, don't even get me started on talking about this pandemic that's going on right now. And I'm just you don't really want me to go there right now, because
but we do want to go to the thing, like you said, faith and tenacity and cultural revolution.
that's
Meaning
right.
you make it a priority. You know what I mean? We are
That's
going to
right.
decide to brand ourselves as a cooperative people, and it start in the music and the acting and the publications, and everything is really consistent with that messaging, keeping on point. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. But the question that Nate is bringing, which is monumental, is how are we going to get that in the communities and get that to our
Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello?
Did you hear me?
Okay, yeah. I think she may have gotten cut off.
Okay.
But how do you think we could get back to that point in your opinion?
Like I said, boy, I'm at a loss. I mean, if you can't, you have to. It has to be a cooperative thing. I mean, we all came together and got Kwanzaa done. We all came together and got Martin Luther King's birthday done. And I know people don't remember it, but that was a real struggle to get Dr. King's birthday recognized. It took years of protest and just keep beating the drum. And we've gotten things done. We got the Reginald Lewis done. We just have to somehow figure out how we can communicate this from the bottom to the top of our people, that we're going to be known for cooperation and fairness, honesty, and stuff like that. Friendly people to do business with. Because that's what the Asians have done and stuff like that, and that's how they seduced the white man to get so far ahead of us. Because
what you're saying right now is what is actually our issue. Because many of us, even with Kwanzaa, there are many of us that refuse to celebrate it. Still, even now, people are disregarding the fact that we have 30 days or 28 days or whatever, 28, 29 days to be able to celebrate our culture, let alone the other 300 and some odd days. But we are refusing to even acknowledge Black History Month and the struggle that it took from it being a day to a week to a month.
Carter Woodson, yeah.
We refuse to acknowledge our own advances, and when we do advance, that's a sellout. Look how disrespectful our own culture has been to Barack Obama. Yeah. We call this man a stand-in. Just the idea of it. I remember before my grandmother was killed, maybe a couple months before, actually the year before, he actually became president. But when the rumblings of him being a possibility, I remember how excited she was, and I remember how hesitant she was to even be excited because she feared for his life. She felt like they would kill him if he got anywhere near that White House.
Yeah.
And I just remember the day that his picture popped up on that screen. And I just remembered how excited she would have been to being able to see that. And it was heartbreaking to me. At the end of the butler, I remember the gentleman who was the actual butler in the story. I remember him saying how so that situation was to have that, but we destroy our own advancement, and we put all these things, these conspiracy theories on it. We diminish the semblance of it. Now you can't tell a black child that they can't be president. It's not funny anymore when a child raises their hand and answers a question as to what they want to be and they say president anymore. We can't laugh at that anymore, or just ignore it, or just let that child have their moment. It's a possibility. We have something to aspire to that's beyond that. You know, we denigrate and destroy anything that has any type of semblance of us winning. Look at what we did to the Cosby Show. Not Bill Cosby himself, but just the Cosby Show. We have many people in our culture have destroyed the image of the possibility of a family that gets together and have a dinner together, and the mother just happened to be a lawyer and the dad just happened to be a. We dismiss that because that's not what our homes look like. We didn't look at that's the possibility of what we could have, because that our home didn't look like that. My mother was not clear. It was just my mother. There was no Cosby in the picture. We didn't have money. My mother wasn't highly educated. Our grandparents wasn't it. Like, it just, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm listening to what your aunt is saying. And I know the possibility. I've seen it. I've watched things slowly happen. I can see the eyes of these children. I teach preschoolers now, and I can see in them the possibility of greatness, but I've also taught 12th graders. And I've seen how over time that just disappears. It simply disappears. That faith, that passion, I've seen it myself. People stop asking what you want to be after 16. They don't ask you anymore. They don't, it's not that they don't care, but if you don't look like you go to Howard or Harvard or be something greater than, they stop asking you. Because they assume you'll be like the rest of them. So in all the work that you're doing to preserve the legacy of your grandfather, and I believe for you, it's more so just the music of this culture in our Baltimore community. How do you think we could get to a space where we are better at just being respectful of our history, let alone trying to preserve it?
I don't know. I mean, these things are completely unprecedented. It's hard to find, you know, another race or another group of people who are not respectful of their history. I think, you know, it's going to take everybody coming together to try to make this a priority. I can only think of just how, I don't know, things have changed so much. You know, in the War of 1812, the British were the greatest enemy of the Americans you could ever imagine. And from 1700s up until the War of 1812, they hated them. Then they got into bed together and they've never looked back since. So everything flips on its edge. You know what I mean? One day you're right, the next day you're left, then you're back right again or left again. And it just, you know, I think, you know, we can't discount the possibility for change. But I think that, yeah, there's so many problems. I mean, it's so deep, you know. I think, you know, you got to look at the issue of addiction. We're addicted to pleasure. We're addicted to seeing each other fight amongst each other. You know what I mean? We're addicted to not being able to read and thus being afraid of books. And so there's nothing really easy. And we're always looking for the easy way out because we worked so hard to get to where we are now. And we see other people living the easy life and we think, why can't we have that as well? So it's a lot to it, but I'll turn it over. Are you on, Auntie? Yeah, take it.
Yeah, I got back on. I got disconnected.
But now you really connected.
So we have 6 minutes. We have 6 minutes left, and because she just got on, I wanted to make sure we know who you are. We understand what your work is. and we understand your connection to helping communities like Baltimore move forward. So we got like
Yes.
4 more minutes left. Can you give us like a closed caption? And you are, as I said to Mr. Brooks, you are more than welcome to come join me again. I don't know how long this pandemic is going to
Yeah.
be, and you learn how to
Yeah.
get in with it, but give us a synopsis of who you are and what we have, what you are offering us as a historian, as a griot, and as an elder in our community.
Well, like Peter was telling you, and I was speaking on it as well. I'm an advocate for our ethnic heritage and for our children. And I have this book that I'm promoting that I would, if I come back again or whatever, I can let you look at it and see what it is. And even if we even worked in smaller groups, but this is a book that we need to get into our libraries. We need to get into our churches. We need to get into everyone's home.
Yes.
It and because it is engagement, and it is so important to our children, to us as a
Ourselves.
culture.
Yeah.
And it's not just depicting my dad and that whole era. We're going back a little bit, just a little bit back, a little bit further back. I am selling the books, and but my
Where
goal
can we
is
find?
right through me, darling. I've got them.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Look her up on Facebook.
No, you don't need. I mean, I can get one to you. I can and you know, I have them. I am selling them, and I would love to get one to you.
Whatever we
And
can do.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Say that again, dear.
No, I'm saying whatever I can do, and this platform can do to help you push that, push your book, and push your acknowledgement. Peter knows.
Thank you. So kind.
Well, you know that's what we can do. Peter can give you my phone number, and we can do it right, right, and I can get it to you. I can take payment for the book right, right through me. I'm at this point, that is what I'm doing, and it's all for our ethnic heritage and moving forward. What's happening here in Baltimore is happening everywhere. I am so blessed to have the history, and which we haven't gone into what my history is, what I have been blessed to experience growing up, being a child of my father, and being the niece of my aunt, being the child of my mother, my mother being from the South, and through that era, I had an extended amount of aunts and uncles, because you did not address your elders by their first name. And I had the opportunity of spending time and being with a lot of these icons that we are talking about, through my childhood. So I had the Aunt Lena's and the Uncle Sammy Davis Juniors and so on and so forth. But these were people, and to be around them and to feel that degree of family and love that they had, not just for one another, but for humanity, which we need to expose the rest of the world to. We know music is a universal language. We know that God has given us all creative talents. We need to let them flow, let them be, to let them cultivate, and let our children deal with their creative energies and to get to their spirit. God gives everyone a spirit.
Yes.
And if nothing else to say, I think she said it all for now. And I'm definitely going to have both of you back, Mrs. Galloway and Mr. Brooks. I'm about definitely make that room in time, and I want to. And we can continue to talk after this, but we're actually going to close out the show Thank you to everybody who tuned in. I appreciate you all. Thank you for with me and transition temporarily into this new format. So I appreciate you. Up next, it is Cocktail Talk Show with Mr. Blue Waters. So stay tuned for them. Thank you again. Don't close out your screens yet. We're gonna talk a little bit after, but thank you again. And this has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show only on BigExposedRadio.com. We don't have the sound effects,
Howdy ho.
Hey, good
Thank
job.